Welcome to Illustrated Beards, brought to you by The Fantasy Shop, best in comics and games since 1981. I am Jason. My co-host for the evening is the director of the... Don't do that.
Don't smile and wave.
I looked over at you and you just looked really nervous. You did that nervous thing.
I'm sorry.
He's actually the director of the show. This is DJ.
I'm normally sitting right there.
In this area over here? Yeah. We're going to review some comics tonight, as we do. We have chosen Batman Eternal #1, The Twilight Zone, which was just a whole thing, and we'll get into that here in a minute. The trade we have chosen is an older one, but a great one, Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes, which is volume 1 of the Sandman story. So, why don't we start with Twilight Zone so we can get all this out of there?
No, start with Batman.
Oh, let's start with Batman. Oh, this is a new one. This is a new one. Okay. Okay, Batman Eternal, #1. Scott Snyder, Jason Fabok, a bunch of other creators as well that are collaborating on it. It is a new weekly series from DC that just started. I was kind of pleased with it. I agree with what you were saying earlier, that it's kind of just a lot of setup.
There's nothing wrong with that. I didn't know what the story was going to be. And I opened it and it's like, bam, right out the gate, everything's burning and it's all dramatic and he's tied up to a bat signal and he's got the bat symbol carved
into him.
And there's this disembodied voice being like, I'm going to destroy everything that you ever loved. And you're like, all right, cool. And then it does the thing that it has to do, which is flashback and teach us how we got here and all of that, which is interesting, but we spend half of a comic with him fighting Professor Pig, who's third, fourth tier.
It's Grant Morrison's fault that Professor Pig is not a third tier villain anymore. He's actually up there at the second tier. Again, it's Grant Morrison's fault that this goofy, weird, kind of pig mask. I don't know. But starting with the end, I think is something that I'm glad they did, because it shows us that they are building to an ending. Most weekly series, they have a good plan going in, and then after that plan kind of comes to fruition, we just kind of fall off.
I kind of disagree. I don't think it's there in order to make you know they have an ending, because of course they have an ending. I think it's there to kind of make up for the fact that not much happens. So
well,
it's keeping you captivated with its whole question of what the heck happened.
Mm-hmm. The villain is clearly someone who knows that Bruce is Batman, because he's here hanging on the bat signal, you know, as Bruce, again with the bat carved into his chest. There are some obvious villains that I had flashing through my head when it's somebody who knows that Bruce is Batman.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe the return of Tommy Elliott.
Oh, no. I actually thought Thomas Wayne.
Well,
I thought Owlman, but not Forever Evil Owlman.
The owl from Court of Owls. Yes.
Owlman.
So Bruce's long-lost brother that we didn't know
existed.
Brother
that may or may not exist.
Sure.
And it's still up in the air.
It is. So yeah, I mean, it goes through, you know, the whole Professor Pig thing, and they obviously, I mean, it's Batman, he takes him down. But then there's some interesting stuff that happens with Gordon. They're kind of introducing us to a protagonist in the story who's like a new detective that's coming on and is going to work with the GCPD.
The guy from Detroit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's honest, and Gordon's like handpicked him from their police force to come here.
At the end, some crazy stuff with Gordon happens. And it does hint towards the fact that whoever this disembodied voice is has a much greater scope of control than theoretically Thomas Elliott or even Thomas Wayne should have.
Right, it kind of feels like there's some mind control.
Powers. Yeah.
Yeah.
How just mind blown would you be if it was Professor Calendar?
Oh, Calendar Man? That wouldn't be one of those things that was good, though. Like, you would get to the ending and go, I've wasted my entire time reading this series. Well, while Scott Snyder does have the ability within his writing style to do that, I don't think that's where he's going with this story.
Scott Snyder, I'm making a call here. He's going to retcon something.
He's done that on a few occasions.
He really makes me think of...
Jeff Johns?
Jeff Johns. He really makes me think of Jeff Johns, but in the Batman universe, where I just got this feeling that this bad guy is going to be someone who we know about but don't care about. And at the end of it, even if it was Calendar Man, you'd be like, oh, no. Because he's such a good writer. You would legitimately be like, that's fair.
Right. If there was a good reasoning behind it, if it was a good build-up and a good story, sure. Yeah, I mean, we come back to that moment from the very first page, on the very last page of the book. And the disembodied voice just says, can't you see it now, Bruce? Can't you see the grand design? So clearly, what this is implying to us is that every moment of this, even just this early story, is being kind of puppet mastered by someone else.
Right, which made me feel a little bit better about trekking through the first 2/3 of this comic.
But Batman Eternal #1, I'm a Batman fan, so I'm kind of in either way. I'm kind of grandfathered in at this point to reading Batman comics. But I think it's worth a look. Like I said, weekly series. You can check it out every week, so you don't have to wait too long between issues.
How long is it gonna run?
I think they have it set around 25 issues, 30 issues.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, this is
okay.
not something...
This is not a bad beginning. Then I thought this was a slow beginning for like a 6-issue burn.
It's a grand scale,
Yeah.
and they're gonna tell it over a bunch of issues, just one every week. But yeah, like so I said, it's an interesting thing. For Batman Eternal #1 weekly series DC, check it out for sure. All right, that brings us to Twilight Zone #4.
So I'm a huge fan of the Twilight Zone. I've got a ritual. No one's allowed to talk to me on the 4th of July or New Year's, because that's when Sci-Fi's running the marathon.
Nice.
I've seen those episodes like 20 times. I love them because they're Aesop fables, but sci-fi, which I adore.
Yeah.
For all of its reasons, all of its beautiful, beautiful reasons. I went in a little hesitant because, Rod Sterling's dead, and he's not in charge of it.
Well, the best thing about that is there's no voices. The voices are all up here.
Yeah, real quick, funny story. I grabbed issue 4, not knowing it was issue 4, read it, and was like, I don't get what this is. We read the moral part of the story without knowing the setup, so we had to go back and read issues 1 through 4.
I literally felt like something was wrong. Yeah, don't start at issue 4. That was a bad idea on our part.
It was.
And I'm a little, I'm not angry, but I'm a little put out by the fact that now I have to buy this comic because it was really cool.
Oh, it's good.
Like, and it feels like a Twilight Zone story without actually being the TV show.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you watch enough of the episodes, you know that they have certain beats, because all of the writers were taught to write a very, very specific way. Everything wraps up in the last 2 minutes, and the rest of the time you're watching someone be awful, and then there's a turn. It's like you can peg them. It's a long form one. It has that feel of a Twilight Zone episode, like someone's learning a lesson to enjoy life or to not be racist or whatever.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't have the beats in it. It feels much longer. It carries on, which was very abnormal for me as a huge fan of it, but I think that's really just me having to deal with a new media.
Right. While this wraps up what could be considered his first episode, if you're looking at it in that regard,
Very much so.
He's got a bigger arc that's going on that involves one of the guys from this story and then 2 other people who were just kind of teased at throughout this 4 issues of this guy's story, which is kind of interesting. And like you said, it takes it out of the TV show world where the stories were very episodic.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I have to buy it now, and I have to pick them up, and I have to read them.
It's solid. It's not going to blow you out of the water, but I have a feeling that when this series is over, it might.
Yeah.
This first story, very typical, good introduction. Nothing amazing about it. It's just very, very Twilight Zone.
Absolutely.
It's very Twilight Zone, which I loved, and that's really all I wanted.
Yeah, and one of the things I always loved about the Twilight Zone is there's always some random simple thing that can change everything. Like in this, it's a pill that changes the man's physiology and literally makes him a different man.
Yeah.
There's no, complex writing. It's, we got a pill for that.
Twilight Zone was so poorly explained every step of the way.
And it was always something simple.
The characters were brilliant. The dialogue was great. The writing. But, like, a robot that's exactly like a woman, like, they didn't bother explaining that. They're just like, we have them.
Right. We did this. It happened. And yeah, so the pill thing, that was this story's simple thing that's never explained.
It's never explained. They just have it.
We just have it. This little pill can turn you into an entirely different person.
I am the first person in most sci-fi to go, I kind of want that explained to me. I really enjoy science, so I enjoy when you give me science behind my sci-fi.
Right.
I've never felt that way about Twilight Zone because the story was so important. The story of what was happening to these characters was always so important that literally explaining the pill, it's so unnecessary. It wouldn't add anything.
Right.
Me knowing how that pill works gives me nothing as far as what this guy is going through as a human being.
Yeah, it's just simply a plot device to get us from point A to point B.
And it works brilliantly.
And that works great. Yeah, you don't need to explain it to me.
No.
I mean, I'm sure there's, and if you really wanted to, I'm sure you could, there is some science behind it. This is a corporation. This guy, they change people's lives.
There's no science behind that. I'm sorry. There's no science behind a pill that changes your DNA.
Well, of course.
There's no science behind it.
It's science fiction. In any case, I mean, yeah, I definitely, now that I've read 4 and even going back and reading 1, 2, and 3 and seeing the ending before seeing the beginning, it didn't really matter. Like,
I can tell you this is not a good jumping on point.
No.
Either buy the trade or start at 5.
Yeah, I feel like you could probably start
I feel
at 5.
like you could start at 5, but don't do this one because literally you're just going to close it and go, you're reading the last chapter of a book not knowing the setup and going, well, I mean, that was kind of interesting, but I don't get it.
Right. I mean, this guy's story is done. Even if his arc is later important to the overall story, the next issue is going to start the next person's story, which is the woman. And so, yeah, I mean, I think you could start with issue 5 and be just fine. But I highly recommend reading this part. Again, wait for a trade, pick it up, because it was pretty cool.
You could probably get them. I don't feel like this is flying off the shelves, even though probably it should be.
Dynamite stuff typically does not.
Which they produce some decent stuff. It's just not as flashy.
Yeah, and it doesn't draw as much attention as Image,
but
and
it's
DC
good quality.
and Marvel.
It is good quality.
Yeah. Other than that, it was a really interesting tale, and I think sets up a really cool next part of it, and I'm stuck with it now.
Also, I'll just flat out say the most story of, I would argue, page for page, probably the most story in any of these comics.
It does cram a lot into.
Crams, so you're definitely getting your money worth on it.
Yeah. So yeah, Twilight Zone from Dynamite Comics. Check it out. It's on the shelf now. So the trade we chose, Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes, which came out way, 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 way back in the 80s. In any case, Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes was the beginning of Neil Gaiman's, for lack of a better term, epic saga of the Eternals, Dream, Death, the forces outside of our realm that we can't see and perceive unless they want to be seen and perceived.
They're embodiments of, like, abstract concepts.
Yeah. Dream is the Sandman. He's the guy who, creates and maintains the world you go to when you dream. This book took place in the DC universe, which I think a lot of people forget that. Yeah. I think a lot of people forget that this happens along the same lines and in the same world as Batman and Superman and stuff. This intro story is about Dream being captured, I should say, on the mortal plane. On the plane that we live on.
Yeah, the first issue, a group of occultists or whatever are trying to capture Death to control it, and they get him, and he stays there for decades upon decades, and then he breaks free, and then he goes about basically trying to get his stuff back, which are like his 3 icons of power, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good
intro.
It's a good intro.
One of the things that is interesting about him being captured instead of Death, it's never explained. In fact,
they're currently
telling a story. We've actually reviewed, I think, didn't we review issue 1 of Sandman Overture? Yeah. Sandman Overture, which is a story that is going to tell us some of these things that were always unexplained.
I did notice that it existing in the DC universe just felt a little uncomfortable to me. And I'm wondering, you've read all of it?
Yeah.
Does that eventually go away, or are they always kind of popping up?
Always. Batman is in a Sandman story.
No, I know, but are they popping up this much?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's constantly trying to reiterate and make you aware that this is all part of the same world.
Well, I mean, and there are even some ones that sort of make sense. Like, I mean, it would make 0 sense if Constantine never interacted with Dream.
Yes, exactly.
Ever.
Yeah.
Like, so that's cool. I can see that one. The best parts of it, to me, were basically when Neil Gaiman characters are interacting with Neil Gaiman characters. That's my favorite stuff. Mm-hmm. Whenever he's talking to Cain and Abel. Yeah. Whenever he's talking to Lucifer.
I love Satan's Palace, too. Lucifer's awesome. Palace. That's just a beautiful thing. When he goes to hell is probably my favorite part of this whole story.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that look like to you? David Bowie.
Yeah.
He's totally David Bowie.
So... David Bowie is Lucifer.
David Bowie's Lucifer. This was my favorite part of this.
My favorite part was how dark it gets when Dr. D gets the ruby.
The last piece of his power.
The last piece of his power, and is just making the world go crazy. And just the single issue of him in that coffee shop.
Oh yeah, the whole issue that takes place in the coffee shop.
It's just one of the most brutal things
It is.
I've really read, and it
is amazing.
Is going to sound weird because it involves people stabbing their eyes out, but it took me back to my childhood when I was reading Vertigo, like Preacher and things like that back whenever they were coming out.
Right.
Because Vertigo's cool now, but I feel like it's kind of lost its teeth.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not being mean, just a little bit lost its teeth. Image is picking up the slack. And this really reminded me of, this was where you would go for comics that didn't talk down to you, that treated you like an adult. And basically you were looking at what could arguably, if the budgets weren't insane, be storyboards for really brilliant rated R movies.
Yeah. The reason this was my favorite is because the battle that he has with the demon in order to get his helmet back is just a brilliant piece of writing.
It is making the most intense thing possible, a battle of life and death, be like riddles.
The demon starts with, I am a direwolf, prey stalking, lethal prowler. Dream counters with, I am a hunter, horse mounted, wolf stabbing. It is this battle of life and death. It is, I am this that destroys it. And the way it ends is probably one of the best moments in the comic. For me, one of the best moments in the comic, because the demon...
It's one of the most famous moments.
Yeah, the demon, I am anti-life, the beast of judgment. I am the dark at the end of everything, the end of universes, gods, worlds, of everything. And what will you be then, Dream Lord? Well, I am hope. That's it. The battle's over.
He can't counter.
You can't counter that, and it's brilliant the way he does it.
It's a battle of life and death, but they're still gonna treat it as this ridiculous kids game.
Yeah,
because
they're in a club on a stage, and
it's not that. It's just that I feel like this is what I love about Gaiman. He has this ability to, I feel like, get into the perspective, genuinely get into the perspective of something that is kind of very non-human. No, it's not that they're being silly. It's that from their perspective, there is no difference between two guys getting into an arena with mail and shield and two guys having a riddle battle.
Yeah.
Because it's all the same.
Yeah, it's all life and death. Yeah, it's just an interesting story. And Neil Gaiman is one of those guys that I don't care, 30 years from now. I mean, here we are. This story came out in the 80s. Here we are in 2014 talking about it as if it's brand new, and it still resonates. And I guarantee you 30 years from now, his stuff will still be that way. He writes stories that are timeless.
The art's a little dated, though.
The art is dated. Art evolves. Art changes.
No, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I'm just saying.
Yes, the art is dated, and it very much feels like that, and I'm sure he'll see.
No, it's very dated, but also, don't kid yourself, it fits.
It works.
It works.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
It does the thing it's supposed to.
It looks a little silly. It would look a little silly
actually don't
in
think
a Batman comic, but it looks fine in this comic
I
here.
actually don't think it looks silly. I think it's dated, it's kind of jaggedy, and it kind of is muddled together, but at the same time, not to be this cliche or read into it that much, but I mean, kind of aren't your dreams?
Right. In any case, Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes, this is the place to start. Overture is going on right now, but based on the nature of how these were written and now Overture is being written, you could absolutely ignore Overture until it's all collected and just start right here. It's a fantastic introduction to Dream. It's a fantastic introduction to Death and just his world and how it all works. And I guarantee you, when you get to the end, you'll want to know what's going to happen next. So,
also, just side note, just read anything by Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, that's pretty good advice.
Really anything. I always will suggest American Gods.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the show. I do want to take a quick moment to talk about, I went to the Wizard World convention, and it was actually quite fantastic. One highlight for me, I got to meet the Doctor. And which Doctor? Matt Smith, the Doctor. And I say the Doctor because he will always be the Doctor. It doesn't matter that he's not anymore. I got a cool little picture, and he signed it, Matt Smith, the Doctor, and he put some kisses and a smiley face. It was great. I had all of these things in my head that I wanted to say, the Christmas special, and I'm gonna miss you, and I loved this and all this, and I got like 10 feet from the guy, and there were, 3 or 4 people in front of me in line, and all of it just shoosh right out of my brain, and I just couldn't remember anything. I was just a giggling, smiling moron as I walked up, and he said hello in his nice, smooth British accent, and it was fantastic, and all that came out of my mouth was, "You're awesome!" I after the fact felt stupid and
sorry, my lizard brain's kicking in. I don't know
words. Said more, and it doesn't matter. No regrets. Because this was just a huge moment for me as a fan. And I deign to hope that maybe Matt Smith will see me glowing like this about how awesome this is. And I again say, you're super awesome, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
I'll tag him. I don't know if he searches himself frequently.
In any case, I had to gush about that. There was all kinds of other awesome things. There were some really cool creators. There were some really awesome booths. It was just an all around really good time. So if you didn't get to go this year, they're gonna be back next May. Go check it out because it was really a fun time. Yeah. So I want to say special thank you to the director, DJ, for coming out from behind the camera and being on the show. So keep reading comics, keep coming into the store, and we'll see you guys next week.